Have you ever felt like something big is about to happen? That nagging feeling that the world is on the edge of a major change? You're not alone. Millions of Americans are sensing it too, and there's a reason why. It's all connected to a prophecy that's been kept secret for generations. What you're about to learn about the third prophecy of Fatima will hit close to home. It's not just about world events, it's about you, your family, and the choices you make every day. The scary part, your decisions right now could be tipping the scales towards one of two very different futures for America. Are you ready to see how? You might think you know the story of Fatima, but there's a shocking twist that will leave you questioning everything you thought you understood. In 1917, three young shepherds in Fatima, Portugal, experienced something extraordinary, a series of apparitions that would change the course of history. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary, who shared with them three secrets about the future of the world. But here's where things get really interesting. While two of these secrets were revealed to the public, the Vatican kept the third secret hidden for decades. Can you imagine the weight of knowing a divine message that could potentially shake the foundations of the world? The Church Fathers deemed this information too sensitive, too explosive to be shared with the masses. The mystery surrounding this third secret sparked intense speculation and wild theories. What could be so earth-shattering that it needed to be kept under wraps for so long? Some believed it foretold the end of the world, while others thought it might predict a major catastrophe or war. The secrecy only fueled the fire of curiosity, and people around the globe began to wonder what terrifying vision those three young shepherds might have seen. As the years passed, the speculation grew more and more outlandish. Some even suggested that the secret might have something to do with the future of the United States. Could this prophecy from a small Portuguese town hold the key to America's destiny? The idea seemed far-fetched, but the Vatican's silence only added to the intrigue. For decades, the world waited with bated breath. What could possibly be so shocking that it needed to be hidden away in the Vatican's secret archives? The anticipation built to a fever pitch as people imagined all sorts of scenarios, from alien invasions to the second coming of Christ. Finally, in the year 2000, the Vatican decided to reveal the long-hidden secret. And what they shared was truly astonishing. The vision seen by the three young shepherds was one of violence and martyrdom. They saw an angel with a flaming sword ready to set the world ablaze. They witnessed the persecution of the church and the assassination of a bishop dressed in white, interpreted by many to be the Pope. But even more chilling were the warnings of war and the destruction of nations. The vision spoke of a world teetering on the brink of annihilation, with humanity facing unprecedented challenges and threats. It painted a picture of a future filled with conflict, suffering, and spiritual warfare. You might be wondering, how does all of this relate to America? Well, that's where things get even more interesting. While the revealed secret didn't explicitly mention the United States, many experts and scholars believe that the warnings and prophecies have direct implications for our nation. After all, as a global superpower, America's fate is inextricably linked to the fate of the world. But the real bombshell is yet to come. As we delve deeper into the prophecy and its potential connections to the United States, you'll discover just how eerily accurate some of these predictions might be. Are we already seeing signs of the Fatima prophecy unfolding before our very eyes? And more importantly, what role might you play in shaping the future that was foreseen over a century ago? Remember that bishop dressed in white from the Fatima vision? That's just the tip of the iceberg. The prophecy contains hidden warnings that seem tailor-made for America's future. What could three young Portuguese shepherds from 1917 possibly reveal about the United States that's so alarming it'll keep you up at night? You might think the Fatima prophecies are just about global events, but they hit much closer to home than you'd ever imagine. These messages aren't just vague predictions. They're like a roadmap pointing directly at America's crucial role in the world's future. And let me tell you, it's not all stars and stripes. Think about it. The United States is a superpower, right? Well, that's exactly why it's in the crosshairs of this chilling prophecy. America's actions don't just affect Americans, they send ripples across the entire globe. And according to the Fatima warnings, those ripples could turn into tidal waves of trouble. But here's where it gets really scary. Look around you. The chaos, the division, the moral decay. It's like America is following a script written over a century ago by three kids who probably never even heard of the United States. The social crises we're facing today, the growing gap between rich and poor, the political battles tearing families apart, it's all there in the prophecy's warnings about spiritual decline. And it doesn't stop there. Have you noticed how natural disasters seem to be hitting America harder and more often lately? Hurricanes, wildfires, floods. It's like Mother Nature's gone berserk. But what if these aren't just freak occurrences? What if they're divine warnings, just like the Fatima prophecy predicted? It's as if the very land is crying out, begging America to change its ways before it's too late. But wait, there's more. The prophecy talks about the threat of a new global conflict. And guess who's smack in the middle of it? That's right, America, the tensions with Russia, the rivalry with China. It's like we're watching the setup for a catastrophic showdown that was foretold decades ago. Are we sleepwalking into a nightmare that three shepherd children saw coming a century in advance? Now, you might be wondering, how does all this specifically point to America's future? Well, here's the kicker. The third prophecy of Fatima doesn't just predict doom and gloom, it offers a way out, a path to salvation. But here's the catch. It requires a massive spiritual turnaround. We're talking about a return to faith on a national scale, a complete 180 from the path we're currently on. And that's where you come in. Yes, you. Because according to this prophecy, America's fate isn't set in stone. It's being shaped right now by the choices each of us makes every single day. The way we live, the values we uphold, the faith we keep or abandon, it all adds up. And it's tipping the scales towards one of two very different futures for our nation. So ask yourself, which future do you want to see? The one where America leads the world into a new era of spiritual renewal and peace? Or the one where, well, let's just say you don't want to go down that road, the choice is in your hands. And believe me, the consequences couldn't be more terrifying. But if you think that's scary, just wait until you hear what's coming next. The warnings about America's future get even more chilling. Have you ever wondered why America seems to be hit by one disaster after another lately? Hurricanes, wildfires, floods. It's like the country is under siege. But what if these aren't random events? The third prophecy of Fatima hints at a terrifying possibility that links these disasters to America's spiritual fate. Are we witnessing the beginning of a divine judgment? You might be shocked to learn that the Fatima messages speak of something called divine chastisement. It's not just a slap on the wrist. We're talking about serious consequences for straying from God's path. And guess what? America might be right in the crosshairs of this spiritual warning. The prophecy doesn't pull any punches when it comes to describing the disasters that could strike. We're not just talking about a few thunderstorms or minor earthquakes. No, the visions given to those three young shepherds over a century ago described calamities so severe they could change the face of America forever. But here's where it gets really scary. Look at what's been happening in the U.S. recently. Hurricane Ida in 2021 caused catastrophic flooding in New York and New Jersey. Wildfires in California have become more frequent and severe. It's like Mother Nature has declared war on America. But what if these aren't just random acts of nature? What if they're actually warnings from above? The spiritual implications of these events are huge. They're not just destroying property and taking lives. They're shaking the very foundations of our society. These disasters are forcing us to confront our own fragility and the need for something greater than ourselves. It's like a wake-up call, urging us to return to faith before it's too late. You might be thinking, okay, but how bad could it really get? Well, brace yourself. The Fatima prophecy suggests that if we continue on our current path, we could face even greater calamities in the future. We're talking about disasters on a scale that's hard to even imagine. Global conflicts, natural catastrophes that make our recent troubles look like child's play. It's all on the table if we ignore these warnings. But here's the real kicker. All of this might be preventable. The Fatima message doesn't just predict doom and gloom, it offers a way out. Prayer, repentance, a return to faith. These could be the keys to avoiding the terrifying future that's been foretold. It's like we're being given a choice. Change our ways or face the consequences. So what does this mean for you? Well, every time you turn on the news and see another disaster striking America, ask yourself, is this just bad luck or is it something more? Are we witnessing the fulfillment of a century-old prophecy? And more importantly, what can we do to change course before it's too late? The choice is in our hands. We can either heed these warnings and return to a path of faith, or we can ignore them and potentially face disasters beyond our worst nightmares. The prophecy is clear. The future of America hangs in the balance, and every one of us has a role to play in determining which way the scales will tip. But it's not just physical disasters we need to worry about. The spiritual decay eating away at the heart of America might be even more dangerous than any natural catastrophe. America was once called a city upon a hill, a beacon of faith and morality. But today that light is flickering and the darkness is closing in. The Fatima prophecy warned of a time when even the mightiest nations would lose their way. Could America be the fallen giant it spoke of? You might be shocked to learn just how far America has strayed from its spiritual roots. This nation, founded on principles of religious freedom and moral virtue, is now facing a crisis of faith that threatens its very soul. The warnings of Fatima are echoing through time, and they're pointing directly at the spiritual decay eating away at the heart of America. Remember when prayer was a common sight in schools and public spaces? Those days are long gone. Statistics show an alarming decline in religious belief and practice across the country. Churches that were once packed on Sundays now stand half empty. More and more Americans are turning away from faith, choosing instead to embrace a secular lifestyle that would have been unthinkable to our founding fathers. But it's not just about empty pews. The consequences of this spiritual decay are spreading through every aspect of American society. Families are falling apart, communities are fracturing, and a sense of moral relativism is taking hold. Right and wrong are no longer clear-cut concepts, but shifting sands that change with each passing trend. Sound familiar? It's exactly what the Fatima prophecy warned would happen when nations turn their backs on God. You might be thinking, so what? Times change, and maybe this is just progress. But the prophecy paints a much darker picture. It speaks of a time when the loss of faith would lead to unprecedented suffering and conflict. Look around you. The growing political divide, the rising tide of violence, the sense of hopelessness gripping so many young people. Are these not signs that America is already experiencing the spiritual consequences foretold in Fatima? But here's where it gets really scary. The prophecy doesn't just warn about individual nations. It speaks of a global spiritual crisis, with America playing a central role. As a cultural superpower, what happens in the United States quickly spreads to other countries. Our spiritual decay isn't just a national problem, it's infecting the entire world. The Fatima messages speak of great suffering that would come as a result of humanity's poor choices. Natural disasters, pandemics, environmental crises. Sound familiar? These were all mentioned as part of a final warning, a last chance for nations to turn back to God before it's too late. And America, with its immense global influence, stands at the center of this spiritual battlefield. So, is America already showing signs of the spiritual decay warned about in Fatima? The evidence is all around us: the rise in mental health issues, the feelings of emptiness and despair, especially among younger generations. These are all symptoms of a nation that has lost its spiritual compass. The prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes, and the consequences could be catastrophic. But here's the glimmer of hope in this dark picture. The Fatima prophecy doesn't just predict doom and gloom. It offers a way out, a path to salvation. And it starts with each one of us. Your everyday choices, the values you uphold, the faith you keep or abandon, they all matter more than you could ever imagine. Because believe it or not, your decisions right now could be tipping the scales towards one of two very different futures for America. What if I told you that your decision to skip church last Sunday could have far-reaching consequences for America's future? The third prophecy of Fatima exposes an alarming link between individual choices and national decay. Could your everyday actions be tipping America towards a catastrophic fate? You might think your personal decisions don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but you'd be wrong, dead wrong. The Fatima prophecy reveals a shocking truth. Every choice you make, no matter how small, is shaping America's destiny. That morning coffee you bought instead of donating to charity, it matters. The prayer you skipped because you were too busy, it matters. The gossip you spread about your neighbor, you guessed it, it matters. Here's the scary part. These little choices add up faster than you can imagine. Skip church once, and it's no big deal. Skip it for a month, and suddenly you're part of a nationwide trend of declining faith. Ignore your spiritual life for too long, and before you know it, you're contributing to the moral decay that's eating away at America's soul. But it's not all doom and gloom. The flip side is just as powerful. Every act of kindness, every moment of prayer, every decision to choose faith over fear, it all adds up too. You might think your small acts of devotion go unnoticed, but according to Fatima, they're creating ripples that could turn into waves of change. Think about it. What if every American decided to pray the rosary daily, just as the Fatima prophecy suggests? The spiritual energy generated would be enormous. It could transform families, communities, and eventually the entire nation. Your personal faith isn't just about you, it's about the future of America. The prophecy warns of a great apostasy, a falling away from faith. And guess what? We're seeing it happen right before our eyes. But here's the kicker. You have the power to reverse it. Every time you choose faith over doubt, love over hate, spirituality over materialism, you're pushing back against the tide of decay. You might be wondering, how could my choices possibly affect an entire nation? Well, let me tell you. It's all about the ripple effect. Your faith, or lack thereof, influences your family. Your family influences your community. Your community influences your state. And before you know it, the entire country is feeling the impact of choices made in millions of homes across America. The Fatima prophecy doesn't just predict a gloomy future, it offers a way out. But that way out depends on you. Yes, you. Your everyday decisions are like votes for America's future. Will you vote for spiritual renewal or continued decay? The choice is yours, but the consequences are for all of us. So the next time you're faced with a decision, big or small, remember this. You're not just choosing for yourself, you're choosing for America. Your actions today could be pushing our nation towards one of two shocking futures. Will it be a future of spiritual revival and national strength, or one of moral decay and divine judgment? The power is in your hands, Every prayer, every act of kindness, every moment of faith, it all adds up. You have the ability to tip the scales towards a brighter future for America. But be warned, the opposite is also true. Your choices could be leading us down a dark path, one that the Fatima prophecy describes in terrifying detail. And if you think the spiritual consequences are scary, just wait until you hear about the economic fallout. Because believe it or not, your personal faith could have a direct impact on America's financial future. You might think your bank account is safe, but the third secret of Fatima suggests otherwise. Could the prophecy's hidden message about America's economy be unfolding right before our eyes? The signs are there, but most people are too blind to see them. Brace yourself for a revelation that could change the way you look at your wallet and your faith forever. You probably never imagined that a century-old vision from 3 young Portuguese shepherds could have anything to do with your financial future. But the Fatima prophecy paints a chilling picture of what might happen when a nation turns its back on God. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. Think about the economic challenges America is facing right now. Inflation eating away at your savings, job insecurity keeping you up at night, and a national debt that's spinning out of control. Sound familiar? Well, believe it or not, these might just be the first tremors of a much bigger earthquake to come. The prophecy warns of great suffering that could arise if humanity doesn't change its ways and seek spirituality. And guess what? That suffering isn't just spiritual, it's financial too. The vision speaks of ruins and destruction, which many scholars interpret as a warning about potential future economic collapse. It's like the prophecy is holding up a mirror to our materialistic society, showing us the dire consequences of putting profits before profits. But here's where it gets really scary. Remember how the first Fatima prophecy warned about World War I and all the suffering that followed? Well, history has a nasty habit of repeating itself. The second prophecy highlighted the rise of atheistic regimes and the abandonment of faith. And what happened next? Global conflicts and economic instability throughout the 20th century. Are we on the brink of something even worse? You might be wondering, what does all this have to do with America? Well, let me tell you, everything. As a major global power, the United States faces a critical choice: embrace spiritual renewal or risk economic and social collapse due to its materialistic values. The prophecy is clear. Without a return to faith and spiritual values, our society may face moral confusion and disorder. And guess what that leads to? You got it, economic crises. But it's not just about the big picture. The Fatima prophecy suggests that your personal faith could have a direct impact on the nation's financial stability. Every time you choose material wealth over spiritual growth, you're contributing to the problem. It's like a spiritual butterfly effect. Your choices ripple out, affecting not just your own wallet, but the entire economy. And if you think natural disasters are just acts of nature, think again. The increasing frequency of hurricanes, wildfires, and other catastrophes in the U.S. isn't just costing lives, it's draining our economy. Some see these events as manifestations of the warnings in the Fatima prophecy, suggesting that these disasters may have far-reaching economic repercussions. So, what hidden details in the prophecy suggest a coming economic collapse in America? It's all there in the warnings about moral decay, spiritual abandonment, and divine chastisement. The vision of ruins and destruction isn't just symbolic. It could be a glimpse into our economic future if we don't change course. But here's the glimmer of hope in this financial doomsday scenario. The Fatima prophecy emphasizes the importance of repentance and spiritual conversion as a means to avert economic and social crises. It's like a cosmic balance sheet. Our spiritual choices directly impact our national stability, including our economy. So, the next time you're tempted to skip church or choose material gain over spiritual growth, remember this: Your decision could be tipping the scales towards economic disaster. The choice is yours, but the consequences? They're for all of us. But if you think the economic fallout is scary, just wait until you hear about the global conflicts looming on the horizon. Because believe it or not, America's spiritual choices could be setting the stage for wars that will make your financial worries look like small change. America's spiritual choices aren't just affecting wallets, they're shaping battlefields. The third prophecy of Fatima paints a terrifying picture of global conflicts that could make World War II look like a schoolyard scuffle. What wars does this century-old vision warn America might face? The answer will chill you to your core. You might think America's role as a global superpower keeps us safe, but the Fatima prophecy suggests otherwise. Our nation has a long history of involvement in world conflicts, from the World Wars to Vietnam to the Middle East. But what if these past battles were just a warm-up for something far more devastating? Right now, tensions are rising around the globe, and America is right in the middle of it all. We're facing off against China in the South China Sea, butting heads with Russia over Ukraine, and still entangled in the complex web of Middle Eastern politics. It's like a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And guess what? The Fatima prophecy might have predicted this exact situation over a century ago. The vision seen by those three young shepherds wasn't just about spiritual matters. It contained terrifying warnings about future wars that would shake the foundations of our world. The prophecy speaks of an angel with a flaming sword, ready to set the earth ablaze. Could this be a chilling reference to the threat of nuclear war that looms over us today? But it gets even scarier. The prophecy warns that without repentance and a return to spiritual values, the world, and particularly the United States, is on a path toward violence and destruction. It's like we're sleepwalking towards a nightmare, and our actions on the world stage are only making things worse. Think about it. Every time America flexes its military muscle or makes a questionable foreign policy decision, we might be inching closer to the catastrophic future foretold in Fatima. The ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, where we've been heavily involved, have led to humanitarian crises and the rise of extremist groups. It's as if our attempts to promote peace are backfiring spectacularly. And let's not forget about the vision of a bishop dressed in white walking through a ruined city. Many experts believe this could be a reference to a future pope, perhaps even in our lifetime, witnessing the aftermath of a devastating war. Could this be the result of a conflict that America is involved in? The thought is almost too terrible to contemplate. But here's the real kicker. According to the prophecy, America has a crucial role to play in either promoting peace or contributing to chaos. It all depends on the choices made by our leaders and citizens in the coming years. Will we choose the path of spiritual renewal and peace, or continue down the road of materialism and conflict? So what global conflicts might America face according to the third prophecy? We could be now looking at a new Cold War with China or Russia, but with far deadlier weapons at our disposal, or perhaps a widespread conflict in the Middle East that draws in global powers. The prophecy even hints at the possibility of a war that could threaten the very existence of humanity, a truly apocalyptic scenario. But don't lose hope just yet. The Fatima message isn't all doom and gloom. It offers a way out, a path to avoid these terrifying conflicts. And believe it or not, it starts with you. Your everyday choices, your spiritual life, your commitment to peace, they all matter more than you could ever imagine. The future isn't set in stone. We still have a chance to change course, to steer America and the world away from the brink of disaster. But time is running out. The warnings of Fatima are echoing louder than ever, urging us to wake up before it's too late. But there's still hope for America's future. In fact, you might be shocked to learn just how simple the solution to all these problems could be. Imagine a future where America avoids the catastrophes we've discussed. It sounds impossible, right? Wrong. The third secret of Fatima outlines a strategy so simple yet so powerful that it could rewrite our nation's destiny. But why hasn't this solution been implemented yet? The answer might surprise you. You won't believe how straightforward the path to America's salvation really is. It all comes down to two words: spiritual renewal. That's right. The key to avoiding the terrifying future we've been talking about is a return to faith on a national scale. But don't roll your eyes just yet. This isn't about forcing religion on anyone. It's about rediscovering the spiritual foundations that once made America great. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a packed church on Sunday morning? Or heard someone openly talk about their faith without fear of ridicule? The spiritual decline in America is real, and it's happening faster than you might realize. But here's the kicker. According to the Fatima prophecy, reversing this trend could be the key to saving our nation from disaster. Now, you might be wondering, how can we possibly turn this ship around? After all, we're living in an increasingly secular society where faith is often seen as outdated or irrelevant. But here's where it gets interesting. The prophecy doesn't call for some grand nationwide religious revival overnight. Instead, it suggests that change starts with individuals, people like you and me. The instructions from Fatima are surprisingly simple. Prayer, especially the rosary, is emphasized as a powerful tool for spiritual warfare. Acts of penance and personal conversion are also key. It's not about big showy displays of faith. It's about small daily choices that add up over time. Can you imagine what would happen if millions of Americans started making these choices every day? But let's get real for a moment. Changing the spiritual direction of an entire nation isn't easy. We're talking about swimming against a powerful current of materialism, individualism, and moral relativism. It's going to take courage, commitment, and a whole lot of faith. Are you up for the challenge? Here's where things get really exciting. The potential impact of a return to faith on America's future is nothing short of miraculous. We're talking about a transformation that could touch every aspect of our society. Stronger families, more cohesive communities, reduced crime rates. These are just the tip of the iceberg. The prophecy suggests that a spiritually renewed America could become a beacon of hope for the entire world. But it gets even better. Remember all those terrifying predictions we talked about earlier? The economic collapse, the global conflicts, the natural disasters? Well, according to the Fatima message, they're not set in stone. A return to faith could actually help America avoid these catastrophes altogether. It's like we're being offered a cosmic do-over, a chance to rewrite our nation's destiny. So how could a return to faith save America from a catastrophic fate? By changing hearts and minds, one person at a time. By rediscovering the values that once made our nation great. By choosing love over hate, unity over division, and faith over fear. It's not just about avoiding disaster. It's about creating a future brighter than we ever imagined possible. The choice is in your hands now. Will you be part of the solution? Will you take up the challenge of spiritual renewal? Or will you sit back and watch as America continues down its current path? Remember, every prayer, every act of kindness, every moment of faith counts. You have the power to tip the scales towards a brighter future for our nation. The question is, will you use it? You might think the Fatima prophecy is all doom and gloom, but there's a powerful message of hope hidden within. America's future isn't set in stone. In fact, you have the power to change it. The prophecy reveals that through prayer and faith, we can alter the course of history. It's not just about avoiding disasters, it's about creating a brighter future for our nation. But here's the kicker. It all starts with you. Your everyday choices, your spiritual life, your commitment to faith, they matter more than you could ever imagine. Every prayer you say, every act of kindness you perform is like a pebble creating ripples in a pond. Those ripples can become waves of change, transforming our nation from the inside out. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore the warnings and continue on as before? Or will you take up the challenge and become part of America's spiritual renewal? The choice is yours, but remember, the fate of our nation hangs in the balance. Your faith could be the key to unlocking a future brighter than we ever dared to dream. Are you ready to take that leap of faith